Look at the screen and remember, if you lived through the late 1970s in the American Midwest or the Northeast, these images aren't just a video, they are a visceral, sensory flashback. Look at the depth of the snow. Notice the orange parkas, the heavy wool hats, and the sheer, unbridled joy of children who found themselves living in a world transformed into a white fortress. That was us. We were the kids jumping off the tops of fences, not into a few inches of powder, but into drifts so deep they swallowed us whole. We spent hours digging tunnels that felt like secret cathedrals carved out of the very substance of the sky. In January and February of 1978, the world didn't just stop, it vanished. The silence was absolute. It was a silence that started at the edge of the porch and extended for hundreds of miles across the heartland. There was a specific sound to that winter, the rhythmic, metallic scraping of shovels against concrete that never seemed to end, and the muffled, distant roar of a neighbor's snowmobile. We lived in a landscape of white mountains where cars were merely bumps in the road and front doors were barricaded by walls of ice. For a few legendary weeks, the fixed anchor of our daily routine was cut loose. School wasn't just canceled, it was forgotten. The rules of the world had been rewritten by the wind.
The archaeology of this winter takes us to a specific moment in late January. While we remember the play, we must also remember the power. Meteorologists call it the Great White Hurricane. It was a storm of such atmospheric violence that it shouldn't have been possible. Two massive pressure systems met over the Ohio Valley like two warring empires, and the result was a barometric drop so steep it felt like the very air was being sucked out of the room. On January 26th, the wind didn't just blow, it screamed. In states like Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan, the temperature plummeted and the visibility dropped to zero in a matter of minutes. This was a human-scale disaster. We weren't watching it on a smartphone or receiving weather alerts on our watches. We were watching the mercury in the outdoor thermometer retreat as if it were afraid of the night. The wind chill factors reached 60 below zero. This was the moment the golden age of mid-century infrastructure met its match. Our massive, steel-bodied cars, the ones we thought were invincible, stalled in the middle of highways, abandoned by drivers who had to fight through chest-deep drifts just to find a flickering light in a distant window. It was the sudden realization of our own fragility. Nature had reminded us that despite our skyscrapers and our satellites, we were still just guests in a world that could turn cold and indifferent in the blink of an eye.
As the storm settled, the archaeology of the burial began. You remember the sight of the interstate. Thousands of semi-trucks and passenger cars sat perfectly still, buried to their rooflines, looking like a graveyard of giants. In Boston, the city was placed under a total driving ban for a week. In the Midwest, entire towns were cut off from the world. This was an era before the just-in-time supply chain, but even so, the grocery store shelves went bare almost instantly. We learned the value of a single loaf of bread and the true meaning of staples. The machines had failed us. The snowplows were stuck behind the cars they were meant to clear. The power lines, heavy with ice, snapped like brittle glass, plunging millions into a dark, frozen reality. We retreated to the hearth. If you had a wood-burning stove or a fireplace, you became the center of the neighborhood. We lived by candlelight, our world shrinking down to the radius of a single flame. This was the great isolation. We weren't just stuck in our houses, we were stuck in time. The 1978 winter stripped away the complexity of modern life and left us with the basics: heat, food, and the person sitting across from us in the dark. We realized that our progress was only a thin veneer that could be stripped away by 24 hours of falling snow. But within that isolation, something beautiful happened. This is the part of the memory that makes us feel truly alive. When the machines stopped, the people started. This was the era of the transistor radio and the CB radio. In a world without the internet, the radio was our only lifeline. We sat in darkened kitchens, listening to the crackling voice of a local DJ who stayed on the air for 48 hours straight, reading lists of grocery stores that had milk or neighbors who needed medicine. There was a profound sense of shared burden. You remember the Snowmobile Brigades, men who used their hobby machines to deliver oxygen tanks to seniors or to ferry doctors to emergency rooms. You remember the strangers who opened their doors to stranded motorists, sharing their limited soup and bread without a second thought. This was the handshake economy in its purest form. We didn't help for a like or a follow. We helped because the person next to us was cold. The winter of '78 proved that the American spirit was at its strongest when the environment was at its harshest. We discovered that our greatest asset wasn't our 401k or our car. It was our neighbor. We were social orphans who had found our tribe again in the middle of a blizzard.
So, standing here decades later, why does 1978 still haunt our dreams and warm our hearts? As economic archaeologists of the soul, we see that it was the last time we were all truly in the same storm together. It was a moment of pure presence. We couldn't work from home. We couldn't order in. We simply had to be. We had to wait. We had to endure. That winter taught us the value of fixed anchors, the reliability of the local news, the strength of the neighborhood bond, and the simple dignity of a warm house. The children in the video, the ones digging tunnels and jumping from fences, grew up that year. They learned that the world could be dangerous, but they also learned that they could survive it. We haven't seen a winter like it since. Perhaps it's the changing climate, or perhaps it's just the luck of the draw. But 1978 remains a milestone of memory. It is a reminder of a time when the world was bigger, the snow was deeper, and we were closer to each other than we are today. We traded that shared survival for digital convenience, and sometimes, on a quiet winter night, we find ourselves wishing for one more snow day to remind us who we really are. Thank you for sharing this journey into the cold. Our memories are the only thing the wind can never blow away. Share your 1978 story in the comments below. Let's keep the warmth of that winter alive. Thank you for watching The Golden Age Insight.